Welcome back guys. This is part 2 of creating full CG underwater scene using Blender and Nuke. In this video we are going to cover how to create those particles emitting from the propeller and environmental particles. Also we are going to see how to get those CG renders into Nuke and do compositing work. So let's get started. Okay, I'll quickly show how I created that bubbles from the propeller. So I just open new Blender file and I copied submarine, which is near to the camera, this one, and camera from the scene. Let's select the propeller and I'm going to edit and go to the side view and select these faces only. I've selected only these faces and I want to emit those particles, bubble particles from these faces. So I'm going to pin them, go to this, add, and in for bubbles, and then assign this one. So when I select those in particles, I can show you later. The bubbles will be emitted from this place, only from those faces. Go to the particle. Let's make it 5000. Go to the first frame. Okay, now particles are emitting from that point. Now all the particles are falling down because of the gravity settings. So go to the first frame, select that, and particles, go to field weight and make it 0. And when you play it, now we can see that our particles are moving just behind that propeller. It's looking good already, but I'm going to add some wind or something. Force field, and let's add wind. Make it bigger so it can be visible in the scene, and rotate it in x-axis like this, and I will keep it somewhere here. Go to top view, select it like this, go to side view, this is okay. Let's parent this one to this one, select this, Control P. Okay, now let's increase the strength of this wind force field. I'll make it 25 and see how that looks. Go to first frame. Okay, that's much better. Now you can see that the particles emitting, but they are like getting started from very first frame. So let's adjust that, and we don't want to see them that they are getting emitted on first frame. So select that and just in the timing of start time of that particle system, I'll make it -200, end frame around 1000, because I don't want to see them dying in this timeline. Also make timeline some more 1000, and lifetime ratio should be 1. It's okay, it doesn't make any big change. Now if I say it's like going from that, it's already looking much better. We don't have to make bigger changes because it will be visible from very long distance. In this, where you haven't set the resolution to, let's set it here, and then we can decide how much is going to be visible. Okay, only that much. And now I'm going to increase the particle count. I'm going to make it 25,000. Go to the first frame and see how that looks. That looks already good. Okay, that's much better now. Now I don't want to use this as my particles. I will create some objects, like very simple objects, and give them glass texture. Let's call them bubbles, and I will add any glass texture for them. If I go to the shader, new, and if I see the lighting view, you can see it's getting, let's auto shade smooth. Okay, great. Now go to the particle system, select the object, go to renders, select the collection, and here in this collection box, just select the bubbles, so it will now emit the bubbles from the particle system. Bubbles with glass textures applied on that, you can see that, and this is what we want. Let's play and see how that looks. Okay, I think this is pretty fine. I'm going to get the render of this just as a bubble. So this is the particle system I used for propeller bubbles, very simple one. You can play with the sizes and rotation as well, but I really don't think that is needed in this case. This is it's in the far distance, so it's not visible at all. Just the feel of that bubbles are emitting from that propeller. In the same way, we're going to add some particles in the whole scene, moving from this point to this point, so we can show that the water is flowing, or there is some kind of dirt in the water. So let's create that one as well. Okay, for that I'm going to create a card and then make it big enough, and same, then go to particle system, add particles, make it around 5000, and I'm going to take it here somewhere, and now you can see that particles will emit if I just play it, but particles are falling down. Obviously we need to play with the gravity, so let's go to the force field, make gravity 0, but this time we are playing more with the gravity, because if I just make it 0, it will be like hovering there on that card. Let's select that and make it negative 0.01 and see how that goes. Okay, now you can see that particles are moving up, but they are still near to the card, so let's make it 1. Okay, now we can see that some particles are already rising up. Go to the side, we can see. Okay, I think I need to bring it more. Let's make it -5 and see how that looks. Okay, that's much better. Let's make it -1. Okay, these settings are good, we can play that, but before that we need to change the timing as well. Let's start it from -200 and end will be 1000 frame, and lifetime will be 1000 again. And now see how that looks. Now they will, yeah, you can see that they are looking much better, but we are seeing them very fast. We can change the speed by just going to the gravity and just play with the speed. I'll just change the speed -0.1, and if I go and see, you can see they are now very slow. Now increase the number of particles. I'm going to make them 25,000. Okay, much better. But in my shot, I don't want to rise them from this to this, or their motion from z-axis. I want to move them from here to here in y-axis. So if I just rotate it and rotate my emitter card and place it somewhere here, and let's play it now and see how that goes. Okay, a card placement is good, but our gravity settings are not good for our scene, because our gravity setting are set in a z-axis. They are all moving upwards. So go to this and go to the gravity section and just copy this value, make it 0 here, and in y-axis just paste it here, and then see how that goes. Okay, so now they are moving that way, they're not coming into the camera. Let's bring them more close to the camera and just remove this negative value, and they should be good this time. Okay, that's simple. You can add turbulence to the scene if you want, like you don't want very linear movement in the bubbles position. Just go to force field and add some turbulence to the scene, and by doing that, just go to this strength value and play with the strength. Now you can see that bubbles are not really in the same direction, they are like randomly moving. It's too much. Let's make it 10 and see how that looks. Okay, that's much better, but in my shot I preferred more like a linear movement, because I don't wanted to make any chaos in the scene. I wanted to keep them subtle. You can also use the submarine and use the damping and all, but I think that's not going to be visible because shot is going to be more darker. I just use the same bubble thing for creating the texture to them. I really don't wanted to make them bubbles. I made them darker, and I just rendered this using Eevee because I know in compositing I can have some more control for the look and feel of those marine dirt. So you can just keep playing with the values and see how that fits to your shot. So this is a simple idea for creating this kind of bubbles. I hope that is useful. So we have created two elements now. One is for propeller bubbles and second one is for entire environmental particles. And I have also created one more element which is noise pass moving in the scene just like flowing water or something that I will show you now. So for that noise pass, what I did is I just took one value. I'll just simply take my fog box and I'll quickly show that how I made that. It is simple thing. Just go to the lighting. So I just took my fog box, and if I go to the shading, I just added one noise. I'll quickly show you how I created that thing. Noise to density, and if I just view this, you can see you can make more changes. Just color ramp and just quickly change the size, made 25 or something, and I use the same noise for density. If I go to the camera view, you can see that a noise is simply we can see some noise or cloudy feel in the scene. You can play with the color ramp values here. And with the size as well, I'll just keep it 10 and see how that looks. That looks good. I'm going to move this noise texture. Press Control T, you will get this mapping and texture coordinates. So just simply using these coordinates, I just animated this noise pass from this to this direction, same as our particles. So I simply added key in first frame and go to the last frame and just small amount of motion. Press I if you want to add key, and I'll just make it linear. So now it's reversed. You can just play with the values. So you can simply see this. I just took this as a pass and rendered it in a separate layer. Okay, so that is the whole process, creating the layout, camera animation, and adding stuffs and creating this scene. Now, once the render is done, we'll start compositing that file and see how that goes. So here comes the compositing part. Now I have all the CG renders. I'll show you the renders one by one. And this is the output. I already comped this file now, and I'm going to show you step-by-step process. It's very easy. I try to keep everything clean so that you can understand every single step. First, I have these renders from the cycles. I have also rendered some of the parts from Eevee, and I have exported camera and some cards just to plate some 2D elements. Let me show you the renders. This is for the pillars. This is for the submarines, and this is the mist I showed you earlier. This is just moving from y-axis. This is God rays render. I wanted to add some rays kind of feel in the scene, so I just added this as extra pass. And these are some Eevee renders. This is particle system. You see this is just a particle moving from x-axis, and same I have taken the viewport render of the mist from Eevee. I have propeller bubbles and I have spotlights separately rendered because it's very easy to have control. I don't want to render all them in one layer because it's quite difficult to have control since it's an underwater scene. It's quite easy to add some diffuse or bloom on the separate passes like this. I have the spotlight mat. It's just for the spotlights where it's interacting with the ground objects. You can see it's visible here, and if I go to somewhere around here, it's only visible there. I can use it as a mat, or I can directly add it on top of our comp, and which is going to act as an interactive light. And this is 3D card. Let me show you just a simple 3D card. And so this is our Blender camera. This is the ground plane. I just taken this plane just above the ground, so we can add any 2D element like moving mist closer to camera. That I will show you in a while. And this is somewhere near to the submarine locations, because if I want to add any interactive smoke or any kind of element near the submarine, I can add it there. So these are the basic renders. This is from Cycle, this is from Eevee. I have created the poster stamp for every one of them because I don't want to copy them each and every time because my comp will get heavy if I do that. These are like simply creating the process time and just turning off the hide input so you won't see that line every time. First of all, I use this constant as a background. Since we are creating an underwater scene, like we are seeing most of the part in haze, I just use this constant. I just added some grade, used a simple mask and just some white point adjustments. Same, I took one more grade and one more grade for this top area. If I turn it on and off, you can see the difference. It's simply giving an impression of light source. Then I have this pillar render here. So I'll go step by step. In this, I just reduced the saturation a bit and I made it look like a bluish overall, and also reduce some of the highlights and midtones. If I make them default, you can see the like extremely bright ones. I just try to make it look like little diffuse, but still we are reading some of the highlights from one angle. And then I have used one more color correction and I have used this normal pass. Then I just took the green channel from it and masked it only for that area, and using color correction node I tried to bring this gamma down a touch, and you can see that effect here. Likewise, took the blue channels from the normal pass, and in this area I wanted to give some feel to these pillars or these objects. That's just using the mask. And I took this normal pass again, blue channels, it's all in blue. I took this EV mist pass and I used a keyer, inverted this matte, used it as a mask, and removed that corner area because I don't wanted this to affect this area. So I just used the same mask and removed this from this area. And using grade node, I made some highlight changes here, you can see. And then I have this ambient occlusion pass. I used a keyer again. If I see the luma, you can see that it's reading some of the edges like this. I masked it only for the top area and try to grade it a bit. So it's like again adding more dimension to the shapes. Using this keyer from the mist, using this as a matte, I use this color correction node and added some more grade on this structure. And since it was very sharp, and I used blur node only on the top area, just simple mask and blurred it, because if I don't do that, then it will look sharp from this point to this point. I don't want it to look it like that. I wanted to make it's blended well into the scene. So that's why I just added simply these two blur nodes. And then I have these submarines. I used the renders. I did not hold it out in Blender because I knew this is very pretty straightforward shot. I can just hold it or stencil it using our structures or pillars. Just took a mask and used only on that area. Turn this stencil on and off. You can see that it's already giving as a cut matte or a holdout. Then I started doing some grading tweaks on these submarines as well. So this grading is only for this area and this background submarines. They are reading very bright highlights. I turn that down. Then grade, overall grading, slightly blue tone, and from the mid tones and the highlights I tweak some of the, like if I go to any frame, you can see that it might change some of the colors here. Let's go to the first frame because first frame is my must frame because we are reading most of the elements in first frame itself. Oh, I forgot to mention that please make sure that you have set your project setting because it's very important at the beginning itself. The frame range is 1 from 250. The frame per second is 24 and resolution is as we rendered from the Blender. Okay, so if I now go to the last frame and see this, we're reading some of the bounce light. I wanted to give some bounce light because on this frame we are reading mostly this submarine and we're seeing very black in the comp and output. So I tried to use this diffuse and spec pass, merge them together, did some grading, added some tone, and used only on the middle submarine, which is in the FG. It's just to give that bounce effect in that bottom area of the submarine, especially in this one. Now I have some 2D elements from Action VFX. I used them like multiple times using retime and offset, and I projected them on the card, and you can see that the rotation is set in a way that we can just read it in the camera. If I go to the 2D view, you can see. So it's very simple one, just two cards on opposite sides to read that element in our scene. Let's go to the first frame because we are reading most of that 2D element in first frame. I did some grading again just to give that bluish tone. I used this mist pass. If I see the key, I used only this FG area as a matte. I try to stencil it out So we can read that this part is in the FG and these are behind these FG parts. This mist part is behind this FG part. Same, I used few more elements and I used slightly above from the first cards. If I see using this scene, and you can see that both the cards placements are different. The old cards are somewhere here and the new ones are little above from that area. So just to see the parallax in the mist and use them above that. Same process, I used the mist. I took the gear, but this time the mat is further away from the FG. If I compare with the previous mat, you can see that clearly the mat is here now and this mat is from here. Using this both the stencils, I try to hold that FG area and try to push that mist behind these pillars or these structures, adding them on top of our scene. So now if I show you the last frame and if I turn this blur nodes off, you can see that it looks very sharp and it looks very prominent. I don't really like that kind of structure there in this area. So I try to add some blur so it will look like it's blending well into the scene. So whenever you're creating an underwater scene, remember that it's a game of volume and depth. So try to simply add more volume or haze kind of effect in your scene, and it's like half work is done with that kind of treatment. Okay, now I have this propeller bubbles I rendered from Eevee. Accidentally, I kept the emitting object in the render, so I just removed them. I simply made them look very sharp or brighter. I added them on top of this, and then comes this main grade. I use this color correction node. I added slightly bit more contrast to the scene and reduce the gain bit. If I see the default, it look like this, and removed some gain from the midtones, and you can see that difference. Now I'm using this spotlight. Here comes the spotlight matte. I wanted to add an interactive light, so that's why I took this as a separate pass. I have this control now. Let's go to this frame. It's visible more clearly here, the interactive light. I added some grade on that, and using the merged plus mode, I added it on top, and to give that diffusion effect, I use this glow node and try to add slightly blur on top of everything, especially on that area where light is interacting with the spotlight. Then I have this Eevee mist. I took the shot from here and blurred it like 500 and multiplied it on our Eevee pass so that it will get that blue tone in the scene. So whenever my shot changes the intensity or any kind of colors in the scene, my Eevee mist will also change the color because I have added this multiply on top using that. Use this diffused blur from our plate. Did some grading on top of that overall mist. Now I have this scene. I took the highlights. I just used the Luma key, stencil some of the parts using the submarines because I don't want it to affect this on these areas. If I don't do that, then simply it will be visible on the submarines as well. And then using the pillars, I use this normal pass again. I change the RGB colors using this hue shift. If I press R or any RGB and play with this, you can see that it's changing the angle of the light. So I can just get the matte. Then I used only the red channels as a red matte and used that as a mask. So simply using the whole scene Luma matte, stencil the submarines and used only the red channels from the normal pass. So we can get this kind of highlights and remove unwanted area like this is getting too bright. So I just remove that using the stencil, using simply a rough mask here, and use Luma key just to get the alpha out. And I added this on top of our scene because you can see these kind of highlights are getting really nice there. It wasn't really good with that default lighting setup, so it's like adding more from comp treatment. Then comes the chord rays. I use this chord rays just a touch to give that kind of effect from that. Those lines are looking pretty cool. Did some grading to them too. On some frames I have blurred them because they were too sharp from that area. So if I turn it on and off, you can see that it's slightly giving blur and more grade. And then I used my mist pass here. If I play this, you can see this mist is moving from y-axis. Use the grade and reduce the gain from that, so you can see this black patches because I used that matte I blurred it a bit and used that as a matte to give that kind of dark patches in the guardrails. So it's simply giving an impression of density change in the water and the volume. Added it on top of everything again. I took my overall shot. I blurred it again like more than 1000 pixels, and I used a square roto here, just a normal roto, and I'm stenciling this submarine because I don't want this diffusion effect to all of the area. I just wanted to get this guy a little darker. So it's like just stenciling that middle submarine using that matte. So this kind of diffusion I was talking about, you can use the value, you can create the value by creating this diffusion and then keep adding them to give that kind of depth step by step. Now I'm using this marine snow. I called it marine snow. This is simply particle I created in EV using the particle emitter. I made them look more prominent using this erode node than using the constant. I know that some of the particles should be darker and some of them should be white. So these are some roto I used to give the different color in that. These are like small tweaks, but they are like visible in the scene. Okay, here is one more thing I would like to share. I took these particles and I wanted to make them look slightly more dense. So I moved them 1 pixel in both the X and Y axis and merged them together. Now you can see they are double, but they are like connected to each other, so we can read them more in the scene. So they will look more prominent using this method. Then I have the spotlights. Using that spotlight, I graded the particles because whenever my spotlight is interacting with these small particles, they should look brighter. And then I used the spotlight again and gave a lot more punch to that spotlight. Use some blur and multiplied on my particles. So if I view it from here, you can see the difference that if I turn this multiply up, you can see all the particles are dark since I used pretty dark constant here. But if I turn that multiply on using the spotlight, wherever my spotlight is moving, we can read our these particles and it gives the feel of that our light is interacting with those particles. It's a very simple comp technique. Okay, now this spotlights, I have this separate spotlights. I did some grading to keep them separate. I should have done them in separate layers, but due to the time I just rendered them in one layer. But I know that these are like very small one here. I can have control by doing some roto, which is easy. Just it wasn't reading well enough, so I did some grading and made it look like more brighter. I gave some blue tone to it, did grading, flow or diffusion, and some more grade to make it look more punchy. And there's some more, like if I go to this frame, you can see there are some changes in the grading. This is just to get that submarine is causing this kind of shadow. It's like simple comp mask. And then let me show you, I use this blur for some reason. I blurred using the spotlight matte. I blurred the area behind that spotlight just to make it little diffuse under that spotlight area. You can see that it's like light is causing us to see less of that background. And this cloudy mist, I have used this again, did some grading on this area to read it more here and less here. I blurred it to give some diffusion effect. I removed some of that area and only masked in this bottom part and placed it on top of our scene again. So you can see that it was reading less. Now we are reading our mist, which is moving from y-axis and only on that area. So give that kind of feel. Then using this camera and setup again, I use some noise bus. This card is just above the ground level and I use this noise. If I simply play this, you can see that it's moving upward. Like this, like very small motion in the noise pattern. I create it and use that on card, and I can see that it's moving from one to that direction. So this thing is for extreme FG. You can see that here. I use some 2D elements. These are snow particles. This is very fast, so I turned down the speed by using Chronos. I kept it 0.3. I used Luma key. I did some grade and use them as a mask. If if I see that they are like slightly bluish or greenish. And same using the spotlight, I use the spotlight for interactive light and use them as multiply, and you can see. So this is helping to create that interactive light on that particles as well, like the same way we did to that small particles. I have more elements for this area just for that part. Okay, I wanted to read some of the mist paths on in these lights as well, so I took the spotlight mat and used only on that areas, and using this mist just try to pull them in that mask, and you can see that slightly it's affecting the mist from that area. You can see it in the play. And overall grading again, just tone down a bit using the gain. And on this part I wanted to give some bloom. If I see the roto, and grade is like slightly white points adjustments. And this is the very important part. I use this blur. This is like 400 pixel blur now, and I reduce the mix. If I keep it 1, the shot will look blurry, so I use these values. You can see that kind of diffusion. I used one more blur, but only to the middle area here, and same I gave the values to 400 and use the mix as 0.2, and I use this chord rays to give that kind of smudgy feel on the edges. Just a tiny value. If you go more, then it will be more stretchy. So I just wanted this kind of look on the both edges. If I don't use this roto mask, it will affect these areas as well. So I use this roto for this only edge area and blurred it a touch, and then overall blur again. Then I use the particles. I mirror them horizontally and use them again in the scene to read more particles in the scene. So it's like doubling the particles by flipping them horizontally. I took this submarine pass, blurred it a bit. I use this volume raise node. So you can, by default, if you take the volume raise, it will be like very sharp and steppy because of the quality. Let me take that and show you. So it's like this. Before that anything, I will keep the values high and array length very super high here, and play with this alpha edges or alpha solid or anything that is fitting well to your shot. In my shot it's shadow making, so I kept these values. I removed this flicker speed and flicker size because that will animate these rays. I don't want that. I use that as a mask in my scene. So if I go to the last frame, you can see it's giving some kind of occlusion just under that submarine. And my favorite thing, chromatic aberration slightly overall everywhere. It's just take any transform node mask, connect it to this scene and make it RGBA. Then you will get this RGBA channels. Untick this red channel and slightly increase the size. So this is quite something like this. And then I have added some more grading on this bottom area just to give that kind of diffusion or read that diffusion in shadows. Now if I see the shot, it's like cyan and slightly blue in these dark areas. I wanted to give some color variations in the entire scene. I took this constant. I started adding grade. I made this warmer here. I made this bluish here and then more greenish here. And then playing with the hue shift, I changed the colors as per my need. I blurred it more. I took my shot and multiplied it on top of that kind of color, and I multiplied that overall constant, this one. If I see this, you can see the colors on to our scene. So you can see some of the color variation in the scene, some kind of greenish or ocean green and dark blue. I gave this slightly distortion using the lens distortion node. It gives that kind of focal point stretch. Double click, you can see the values are very less. I don't want to make it too stretchy, so I just use these small values and have this lens flare. I use this lens flare on the first spotlight where it's hitting directly to the camera. I made them look or read more, added some colors, reduced this guy a little bit and also blurred it and multiplied it. Same using that color tone, I multiplied it on that lens flare as well and animated it only on the frames where lens flare is hitting with the camera lens. Then overall grading slightly more bluish and So this thing is like, I wanted to add some diffusion only when the spotlights are hitting directly to the camera. So I took the shot, I blurred it like these high values, and using the merge node, using this average operation mode, I animated them only on those frames when light is hitting to the lens. It's only opaque on those frames when light is hitting to the lens directly from that spotlight. I have more lens flare. I use them just for the short look. Same, I use them. I animated the opacity only when it's needed, like on these frames. Then overall camera shake. In my camera shake, the amplitude is set to 10 and frequency is very less. If you see this graph, you can see that it's not very jittery. It's like slightly moving. And I also gave some kind of rotation because I don't want it to keep it very straight from one point to this point, end point, which is giving some kind of turbulence in the scene. And then overall grain, adding this kind of grain will definitely help you to make your shot look less CG, because we don't read any hard edges, and also gives that kind of noisy feel on top of everything, which won't affect anything but which will help you to get rid of that CG looking feel from your shot. So this is the final output. Underwater scene is just creating the depth, playing with the volumes, playing with the lights if you're in the scene, or playing with the particles, dust or debris or 2D elements, and if you have any marine life like these plants or anything. So if you want me to cover any specific points from this short or from this tutorial, please let me know in the comments, and then I can create in detail video on that. I hope you guys like this shot, and if you really like and enjoy my videos, please subscribe and hit like, and please share my channel. Thank you guys. See you in the next video.